in its star.
You ever heard of Ghosts and Goblins? It was a game designed back in the arcade days to steal your quarters by making a game so unfairly challenging that it would make hardcore level 1 never use any summons, weapons, or basic pattern recognition Dark Souls players blush. But alongside this series, there were two spin-off games, Maximo Ghost to Glory and Maximo vs. the Army of Zin. This spin-off series was basically a 3D spiritual successor to Ghosts and Goblins. And with Maximo's first game, they really wanted you to feel that, for better or for worse. Growing up, I had only played Maximo vs. the Army of Zin, and I recently decided to play through both of the games back to back, and boy am I glad that my first impression with this series as a kid was with the second game, because the first game would have made me really hate this series. The story of Maximo Ghost to Glory is pretty simple. Maximo's girlfriend Sophia has been taken hostage by an evil sorcerer named Achille, and Maximo has to save her.
Achille, you told me Maximo—
Silence!
Whoa, Achille, dude, that's not okay. Maximo's first attempt to save Sophia doesn't go very well because, he dies. But fortunately for Maximo, Achille had also managed to make the Grim Reaper upsetty spaghetti by stealing the souls of the dead before they reach the underworld to power his undead army. So the Reaper makes a deal with Maximo that he'll keep bringing him back to life as long as he eventually defeats Achille. So when you start playing the game, the very first thing you'll notice is the really odd camera angle. Well, you might want to get used to slightly tilting your head as you play because the entire game is like this. As Maximo, you can move around and collect coins. They make this cool sound effect that makes it sound like they're saying the word coin. You can also collect armor, which is how you increase your health. You can double jump and fight enemies with a number of abilities that you unlock through random drops from enemies. But if you lose all your health, you also lose all the abilities you picked up, and you also go back to the last checkpoint. Also, checkpoints don't activate automatically. You have to manually activate them with a down strike. I didn't figure this out until I was already 6 levels in. Your main objective in each level is to fight and platform your way through the level until you find a totem protected by enemies. You then defeat the enemies and destroy the totem to complete the level. This kind of level design makes the act of fighting any enemy along the way kind of pointless. The only ones that matter are the ones guarding the totem, or the ones holding a key to a gate. Fighting them otherwise runs the risk of you taking damage, and this game is very stingy with health and armor drops. Health and armor will very rarely drop from enemies. Most of the time, your most reliable way to heal is these little shops that sell them, and these little shops are the only reason to collect coins. And one of the main ways to get coins is by defeating enemies. But why would I risk fighting enemies that will very easily damage me, making me need to buy health? But in order to buy health, I need coins. In order to get coins, I need to defeat enemies. But defeating enemies gets me hurt, so then I'll need health, so I spend my coins to get more armor and health so that I can fight more enemies, then I take more damage, then I need more health, then I take more damage, then I need more health. It's a risk-reward system that's more risky than it is rewarding, so I ended up avoiding most enemies if I could. And the battle system doesn't help with this either. Your sword swings are clunky and slow, so if you don't hit the enemy, you leave yourself open for a long time. And there are just so many enemies that recover quicker than you do. So even if you do manage to hit them, they'll recover and hit you back faster than Maximo can recover. And that's not even the worst of it. Even something as basic as saving your game is made tediously challenging. Throughout the game, you'll make your way through several levels within a realm, and eventually you'll gain access to that realm's boss. After defeating that boss, you'll be offered 3 choices. A kiss from the woman you just saved, which gives you some kind of permanent upgrade or something. I don't know. I never chose it because my Maximo is faithful to his girl Sophia. You can also choose to get a full set of armor, completely refilling your health to the max. Or you can pick the third option, which is saving your game. In order to save your game, you have to finish several levels, defeat the world boss, and then ignore 2 significant upgrades just to save your game. Eventually, I do want to talk about what I enjoyed about this game, but I do have one more negative to get off my chest, and that's the game's final boss, Achille. So, you remember those abilities that I told you about that you randomly get from defeating enemies? The ones you lose if you die? Yeah, against Achille, those are required. He surrounds himself with these shields that each require a certain ability to break. Otherwise, he's invincible, and you can't defeat him. So let's say you know that ahead of time, and you prepared yourself. You've got all the abilities you need. Well, you better hope you don't lose a single life while fighting him, because when the fight restarts, you won't have them. And there's no option to exit the fight and go back to the level select. The only other option you have is to exit to the title screen and load your last save, which, reminder, was after you defeated the previous boss if you chose the option to save your game. But let's say you did. You still have to replay the entire world and pray that you get every randomly dropped ability along the way. And then you can try and fight Achille again. I am not a madman. I played this game with save states. Bite me. Even if you have every ability, it doesn't make the boss easy to fight whatsoever. Achille does a ton of damage, and when you deal enough damage to him, these machines will rise out of the floor, turn him into a giant, increase his damage, and heal him. So you have to avoid him and destroy the machines. But you've got to destroy them all quickly because the machines can repair themselves. After you get his health about halfway down, Achille decides to fight you mano a mano with only his staff. Well, that's a mistake on his part because it's the easiest part of the fight. But even if you manage to defeat Achille, you better have enough lives stored away for the actual secret final boss. After defeating Achille, Sophia joins Maximo's side. But plot twist, it's not really Sophia, it's a demon. And now you have to fight that demon in complete darkness. This fight honestly isn't that hard, but it's just the fact that I just defeated Achille and I would very much like to roll credits now. But after defeating the demon, Grim comes along and lets Maximo know that the demon he defeated wasn't actually his girlfriend Sophia, and that somewhere out there, she's still alive. So Grim and Maximo set out to find Sophia. The end. After finishing the first Maximo game, I didn't walk away with a lot of positive thoughts about it, but I do have some. The level select is a level itself that you have to fight and platform your way through to get to each level. In each level select, there's always a tower in the middle where the boss resides, and there's even hidden secrets sprinkled here and there. It's all just a cool bit of level design. The last thing I liked about this game was the different kinds of elemental swords you could find, like the light sword, dark sword, fire sword, and ice sword. That one was the best because you could stun lock enemies with it. But that's all I've got to say about Maximo Goes to Glory. Now it's time to move on to the much better game, and the biggest reason I believe the Maximo series deserves a second chance. Maximo versus the Army of Zin. The game opens up with a scene of the far distant past, a battle between Castle Hawkmoor and the Army of Zin. The knights just barely managed to defeat them, but the souls powering the Zin threaten to resurrect them all, so the knights decide to gather them all up and lock them away in a giant vault. But before they can seal the vault, the Zin begin to resurrect, and the knights barely have the strength to fight them back any longer. That's when Lord Morgan jumps into the vault to fight them back.
Seal the vault behind me!
But Lord Morgan, you'll be trapped!
Seal it now! On this day, I charge the heirs of Hawkmoor to protect this vault with their very lives. It must remain sealed forever.
The story then moves on to the present, and we see some thugs trying to mug someone in the woods.
Why don't you say something? Yeah, who do you think you are?
My name is Maximo.
Already you can tell that this is a much better design than he had in his first game. A woman comes running out of nowhere, begging for help for her village. A Zin appears, cutting down the helpless thugs.
You're late, Grim.
I always show up in the end.
Grim lets Maximo know that souls have been disappearing from the underworld again, and that he has a hunch that Maximo's girlfriend Sophia is still alive. So Maximo and Grim set out to save the village, defeat the Zin, and hopefully find Sophia along the way. The first thing I noticed right away was that the camera wasn't tilted like the first game, so I straightened my head back up and kept playing. Immediately I could tell Maximo was a lot faster, in more ways than one. He can run faster, attack faster, he has more versatility to his attacks, his animations are more fluid and recover faster, making engaging in combat way less risky. He can dodge roll, he now grabs ledges with his sword when platforming. Maximo overall received a huge upgrade in how he controls, and it all feels great to play. Shops have been expanded too, offering way more than they did before. There's a merchant who sells armor upgrades and health items, and an old soldier who can teach you new combat skills and increase your special meters for a price. This makes collecting coins way more important, and now the game is way less stingy with dropping health and armor, and enemies are way more balanced, so engaging in combat isn't as risky as the first game. Maximo also gets other weapons in this game other than just variants of his sword. He also gets a great hammer. The sword and the hammer also get elemental variants. You also get a fire sword and an ice hammer. The ice hammer was my favorite because you could just freeze enemies and then bonk them and freeze them and bonk them, but Maximo isn't fighting alone in combat anymore. As you collect souls by defeating enemies, you fill up your Grim gauge, and when it's full, you can briefly transform into the Grim Reaper, making you completely invincible and allowing you to deal massive damage. Each level throughout the game now has cutscenes, which really ties the whole adventure together and makes it feel like one cohesive story. The level select itself is really the only negative I can think about, because unlike the first game, this level select is just that. It's just a basic level select, which is kind of a downgrade from the first game, but I imagine the developers did this as a means of cutting corners in order to add the amount of quality that they did in the actual levels, and it really shows because there is so much style and flair in each level, and they're all so distinct from each other. Oh, one feature about this game that I really do like, every once in a while there will be these helpless villagers, and they'll be running away from Zin. You don't have to save them, but if you do, they reward you in all kinds of different ways. They can just give you a bag of gold, they could give you a key to a chest, they could give you armor or health, they could tell you where a secret treasure is, so each villager is worth saving. This system also incentivizes you to go into combat even more. But after fighting his way through the army of Zin and defeating their leader, Lord Bane, it turns out Lord Bane was possessed by the spirit of Achille, the villain from the first game, and he's back for round 2, except this time his boss fight is actually really cool and not bullshit. When Achille is a spirit, you have to hit him as Maximo to absorb his souls, filling your Grim meter. You then transform and attack him as Grim, which eventually will resurrect him, which then allows you to deal actual damage. And that's basically the whole fight. He switches back and forth between being dead and alive. But just because it's simple doesn't mean it isn't fun. And I think that's what Maximo 2 learned over Maximo 1, to ease up on the difficulty and allow players to feel empowered, and add just enough variety to allow player expression. After defeating Achille, Maximo once again resumes his search for his girlfriend Sophia, and to this day we have no idea if he ever found her because Maximo vs. the Army of Zin was Maximo's last game. The game released around the same time as industry giants like Ratchet & Clank, Jak and Daxter, and God of War, leaving it struggling financially in their shadows. The only thing it could rely on was the first impressions of its much better selling first installment, Ghost to Glory. But unfortunately, that first impression left fans thinking that Maximo was a super hard and unfair series like its predecessor Ghost and Goblins, and thus many fans never gave the sequel a chance. So ultimately, because Maximo 2 didn't sell well, Capcom canceled its third game, and the series has been sealed away in the Capcom vault ever since.
It must remain sealed forever.
But if Capcom ever gave Maximo another shot today, especially running on the RE engine, oh my gosh, could you imagine how good that game would look? But if Capcom ever wants a stellar platforming adventure game, all they have to do is give Maximo one more chance. But a man can dream. I've just been on that Maximo 2 cliffhanger since the PS2 days, and I just want to see my boy Maximo happy again. But that's all I got for today. I'm gonna go cry into a pillow now.